Tomorrow, before we cross over the valleys towards the Alps, and we go to Plateau de Bailly, a distance of 170 kilometres next. 151 riders left in the Tour, as this rider, 131, Casagrande, crashes out of the Tour. Cofidis have lost their apparent leader of the team. There were others too, like Bueno Hora, and this was Jens Voigt. That's the way to lose your King of the Mountains jersey. He was lucky that's all he lost. Another man who retired today, Philippe Gaumont of Cofidis. And this is the judge showing all of the numbers he's collected so far. A massive retirement list, some of them the stars of the Tour de France. But little Marco Pantani played his cards, couldn't quite get up for the stage win, but nonetheless, Massey got the victory. This is where the favourites are now. Bjarne Riis is into 10th place, looking further up the list. Bobby Julich right in there now. But Jan Ullrich is again the man to beat in this Tour.
Ja gut, da trennt sich die Spreu vom Weizen und ich hoffe, dass ich morgen wieder gute Beine am Berg habe und morgen ist sicherlich noch ganz, ganz schwer. Ich bin die Etappe ja schon vor 2 Wochen in der Route Süd gefahren und ja, also es war eine ganz, ganz schwere Etappe und ich hoffe, dass das Wetter wieder besser wird. Also es ist ganz kalt und das hält natürlich unwahrscheinlich viel Energie raus.
Well, Jan Ullrich has got part of his wish. It's an absolutely idyllic day in the Pyrenees today, and after yesterday, the riders are going to be pretty happy about that. They certainly are rolling away, 170 kilometres they're facing up to now as we go to a new finish in the Tour, Paul, the Plateau de Bailly.
Well, one or two of the riders do know this climb because it's been used twice in the past in the race that starts just before the Tour de France called the Route du Sud. In fact, as we look at the conditions, the riders will be racing in again. The temperature's starting to climb once again and the riders, I think, a little happier than they were yesterday.
Well, the first challenge, the Col de Monte, made famous by the crash of Lewis Ocaña back in 1971 when he was beating Eddie Merckx by almost double figures in the Tour, and we'll never know if he would have beaten Eddie because he crashed out.
Chance here just to see the speed these riders attain on the descents, but today is going to be a very difficult day for the riders because that final finish up to the Plateau de Bailly is a serious finish to a stage of the Tour de France. In fact, Jan Ullrich, wearing the yellow jersey this morning, broke his contract with Telecom to come down to the Route du Sud so they could actually try this climb out before he came here to the Tour.
So he knows what's in store now, but he rode so well yesterday. Can he do it for a second day running here in the Pyrenees? His tempo riding kept him not right back in the Tour. He put him right on top of the leaderboard. He was wise, I think, to lose the lead after the time trial. I wonder if his form is really as good as we think. Anyway, coming up towards the top of the Col de Monte, and it is Alberto Eli again in the action. I'm a little bit surprised he's attacking his teammate Massey here, Paul, to take the points.
In fact, I can't work out the logical decision there to do that unless he thinks that his teammate Massey will not last the distance of the Tour de France here. And the riders approaching the memorial to Fabio Casatelli, who died in the Tour de France in 1995. Many of the riders here knew him very well, and his family turned out this year to witness the Tour de France going past this monument.
Well, further up the climb, Alberto Eli again going for the sprint ahead of his teammate Rodolfo Massey. Very strange, but he gets more points there at the top of that second category climb. And we move on now to the Col de la Cour, and the rider in the lead here is Roland Meyer, and he's only briefly in the lead. He's gone over the top first, and he's gone straight off by hitting the barriers on the descent there, Paul.
Taking too much of a risk on the corners there, trying to pull himself into good condition, but you see, this is exactly what happens. But he has got up and he has control of himself again, and he goes over the top of the next climb in first position.
So the Col de Port, and Meyer is first there. Stefan Erlo goes over in second, a minute 53 back. The main field containing Ullrich at the moment, Paul, just over 4 minutes down, but we're down towards the climb away from Tarascon now, and this is on the plateau itself.
Excellent riding, still Meyer up in front there, putting a great performance in by Cofidis today. I think somewhat liberated, but you know, Phil, there's been a puncture at the bottom of the climb here, and the yellow jersey, Jan Ullrich, is off the back of the main group, being paced back at the moment by his own teammates.
Well, there's Zabel. He was going back, I think. He's gone straight off the back now because the pressure's gone on at the front of the group here, which is down to about 35, 40 riders. Ullrich is being dragged very quickly by the scruff of the neck back into this pack because the climb has already started to bite. And it looks as though his two remaining teammates, Bolts is one of them, is doing some tremendous work to get him back in, but they've had to react so quickly.
You couldn't have punctured at a worse possible time because the climb has started in earnest.
You're right there, Paul, and he's had a little bit of a problem getting back here, but look at this now. Ulrich, in the end, has destroyed his teammates, but he is powering back up to the group. Now he's got to pick his way through these riders and get right back to the head, just to calm them all down.
That's the most difficult thing for him now, because a lot of these riders are just sitting up at the bottom of the climb. In fact, I think he's riding himself right into the front group, because there is the leader of the King of the Mountains, Rodolfo Massi, and a great job of work has been done by his teammate there, and Ulrich is now back in the front group.
Well, George Tochnik was the last man to stay with Ulrich. He's now fallen away, but he's seen his leaders safely back in the pack. They are coming back together, but this is really going to be a showdown now on this last climb to the top of the plateau.
On the front there, right-hand side, in the blue jersey of US Postal, Jean-Cyril Robin riding a very good Tour de France. Pat Jonker is there as well for Rabobank. And Laurent Jalabert, who feels this year he's got a great chance of finish highly in the Tour de France, is also present at the front. In the group as well, just to the right-hand side, you can see Kevin Livingstone.
Well, Livingstone for Cofidis. Cofidis are riding very well in this race as a team, despite the fact they have lost their leader, Casagrande. There's a little present of Pat Jonker from another Dutchman, and that's Michael Bogart. Jonker brought up in Australia, in fact, but they think he's Dutch over here. He speaks the language fluently, comes from a Dutch background. The pace on this climb is very, very fast, and sooner or later somebody is going to crack.
So there's Ulrich in the back of that group of riders. He has done a magnificent job to come back, Phil, because that was the worst time to puncture right at the bottom of the climb, and he's pulled his way right through the field of all of the riders in the Tour de France to join the front group behind the leader on the road, Roland Meyer.
Well, this looks like Manuel Beltran of Benesto. He was brought in to be a strongman alongside Abraham Olano, but Olano has gone out of the Tour today. He retired very early on from the injury sustained on the descent of the Obisque, and now Pantani has decided to go just like he did yesterday, but the riders are not so far in front of him this time.
Second time in 2 days, the big reaction, Phil, coming from the yellow jersey himself, Jan Ullrich. He knows the danger of the Pirate, Elefantino, Dumbo, a whole host of nicknames for this man, and he doesn't want him to go clear on this climb, and he's chasing him down.
Well, this climb takes it up to 1,747 metres. There's been a reaction from Ullrich. He's not going to allow Pantani to do what he did yesterday. Little bit surprised to see Jalabert still in the company at this level of space, but you know, Ullrich has looked as though he was coming up, Paul, but the gap has opened again.
He hasn't closed the gap. There is Beltran on the right-hand side. He's being picked up by the flying Italian, and in fact, I think Jan Ullrich has sat up now. He's not going to try and stay in the slipstream of the Italian. He's just going to try and ride up this climb at his own tempo.
As soon as he looked over his shoulder to see if Jalabert would give him a hand, it was obvious he was right on his limit. Jalabert was not going to give him a hand, and in fact Ullrich has had to pick up the pace again. Now the climber has lifted it one notch higher. Can he do it again?
But Beltran tried to hold on to his back wheel there, but there was no chance at all. In fact, he's cracked, and he soon will be back in the group with the yellow jersey. No help coming to Jan Ullrich from anyone else in that group. He's the leader. He has to do all of the work himself, and Bobby Julich is still there.
Well, the face a little bit more pain than it was yesterday on the Parasol for Jan Ullrich. Roland Meyer still in front just as the Pirate starts to come up. This is Bjorn Ries here. He was the one that stayed in the group, holding position when Ullrich punctured. But you know, it looks to me now as though he's suffering, but he's just come across that first gap.
Well, the Devils come out once again to help the riders, spur them on, and the man he's hoping he can spur on to victory this afternoon is Roland Meyer. What a revelation in this year's Tour de France. A magnificent ride for him despite that crash, but really coming down on him now, Marco Pantani.
Well, still in the group here, Leonardo Pipoli. Sensational climber in the Giro, but now looking like he might be something of a sensation in the Tour de France. And Ullrich getting all the fluid down here now because they tried to contain Pantani. They've so far failed to do so, but there's still a long way to go up this climb. Jalabert also seems to be losing a little bit of his steam. And Ries is yo-yoing at the back, but he's coming back on again.
He's fighting. He's a courageous rider. He won the Tour de France 2 years ago, and he wants to try and stay in that group with Jan Ullrich so that if it does come to a situation where they're in difficulty, he'll at least be on hand to help the German.
Well, this is Roland Meyer. He's had a marvellous ride today and he's still out there. Don't forget, he's been off the side of the Col de la Cour. He scrambled back up into second place when he got back on his bike, and he's back in the front now on his own. Pantani, I was about to say he's coming up, Paul, but he's up.
Well, he's amazing. He's actually knocked back 1 minute on Raniero in no time at all. He comes alongside the Swiss rider there, looks across at him, and now I think he will attack almost immediately.
But he's taken a little bit of a while to get up alongside Roland Mayer there, and he's not pedalling away from him yet. Mayer just remaining his concentration there, hardly looking across at the Pirate, but he's trying to visibly lift his pace. He knows the acceleration is coming. Here it comes now from Pantani. Such a typical attitude of a climber. Lift the tempo one more notch and break your rivals. 50 seconds is now the gap. It's beginning to look a little bit serious for Ullrich.
Ullrich's not panicking though. Look at the face, complete control. He's looking around to see who is in the group with him. Bobby Julich sitting in second position. He won't attack at the moment, Julich, because his teammate is still up the road. But look at this. Jalabert now has been dropped. Alongside him as well, the champion of Spain in the orange and red jersey there, Angel Casero, and Beltran, who earlier was on the attack. But Marco Pantani now alone in the lead.
And the plateau living true to form as we break out of the shadow of the trees. Right in the distance, far as you can see, is the summit of this climb. But now the weather is beautiful here and the pursuit is hot as Bogart now sets the pace. He is a sensation this year. He has been Rabobank's secret weapon for a great Tour performance. He wants a podium place in Paris, and ever since the prologue, he has been in the frame. 3 kilometres to go now for Pantani. Second yesterday, he's now racing for the win.
Incredible performance there. He gets out of the saddle. Every time he slows down, he comes out of the saddle to accelerate, to keep the pace high. That is what a pure climber is all about. He's not able to ride at a constant pace like Jan Ullrich is doing here. He has to accelerate. Every time he goes below a certain speed, he'll get out of the saddle and lift it once more.
I'll tell you what, Ullrich is finding all of the pressure of being the leader of the Tour. Yesterday he was marked, today he's being marked, nobody is helping him. He had an atrocious slice of bad luck at the start of this climb, yet he got back. Obviously he hadn't recovered from the chase because Pantani went. The nice thing was that Pantani didn't attack when he was off the back with that puncture. Look at the crowds.
Unbelievable crowds out here on the slopes of the Plateau de Bay. And you know, Bobby Julich there has a very good teammate alongside him. That's Christophe Raniero. He's another rider from Cofidis. Cofidis packing a lot of riders into the top 10 this afternoon, but nobody could rival Marco Pantani. Wearing 21, he finished third in the Tour de France last year, and he really has come to this Tour de France with no pressure on his shoulders at all. He won the Tour of Italy, Phil, and he said, I'm coming to the Tour, I just want to win stages, and I think the way he's going now, he's going to walk away with this one.
Well, this will be yet another win for him. He usually wins in twos, and he missed out yesterday, but he's still got the Alps to come, of course, as we make our way up to the summit. The local people here say these are the finest views you'll get anywhere in the Pyrenees, and I don't think we can disagree with them today. You can see for miles, and we're getting up to the dizzy height now of 1,747 metres, and Ullrich is still having to answer every attack because no one is helping him.
Incredible change in the weather conditions after yesterday when we saw the rain coming down, the clouds over the top of these mountains. Today it's a perfect condition for racing. Ullrich isn't panicking at the moment, he's just riding at tempo. He doesn't want to lose too much time, but Marco Pantani just has 1,000 metres left.
Well, they can face to a couple of days of undulations once they head over towards the Alps, once they get this climb behind them. But Pantani is going to turn his back on the Pyrenees with a victory for sure now. Inside the last 500 or 600 metres to go, and Marco Pantani knows now that he is going to win this stage of the Tour de France. And this is the chase group there under the 1 kilometre to go banner now, but Pantani is sprinting for the victory. It's been a great couple of days in the Pyrenees. Second yesterday, a win today. He's won at Alpe d'Huez twice, Gouzet-Neige, he's won at Morzine, now he's won at the Plateau de Bay. And that is a great victory for Pantani, as the clock will now show him moving up the overall classification.
Well, there's Bobby Julich sitting in second position there, Phil, and I do feel that he should have attacked Jan Ullrich today because Ullrich was all alone on the slopes of this climb, and I feel in a little bit of difficulty.
Ullrich really has been a lonely rider this last couple of days of the Tour de France. There's one or two strong men coming through here now. The Cofidis team have had a wonderful day out. Roland Mayer is still ahead of this group. Looks set now to take second place. They've got two riders here in the group, so they are going to walk the team race in this Tour.
And Escartine in the green jersey there, riding himself as well high into the overall standings. And Roland Mayer, Phil, has held on to second place. That was a magnificent ride by him.
Mayer's been absolutely brilliant today, despite that fall on the descent of the Col de la Cour. He's now getting up and finishing in second place at the top of the plateau. And it looks as though Bogart's trying to lead out, but he's going to be beaten by Bobby Julich, who's riding an inspired Tour this year. So third place over the line for Bobby Julich, and the time gaps are opening. Il Pirato continues his climb up the overall classification, but what about Bobby Julich? Third place today, and this rider really is having a great Tour de France. And straight after the finish, Paul Sherwin was with him.
Bobby, incredible ride there to stay up alongside Jan Ullrich.
Yeah, you know, I felt very good today, but I had a guy up the road, so there was no way I could attack. I wanted to play it safe in the Pyrenees, you know, and we'll just have to wait and see in the Alps, you know.
You said before the Tour de France you were a little worried about the Pyrenees and felt that the Alpine climbs would be better for you.
Well, if the Alpine climbs are better for me, then I'm excited, because the Pyrenees went pretty damn good.
And they certainly were, and Marco Pantani will think that as well, because he's had a first and a second place in the mountains, and Bobby Julich has shown himself now to be a real challenger in this year's Tour de France. That's the situation. Julich now 1:11 behind Ullrich. Jalabert is third, equal with Marco Pantani. Michael Bogart lies in fifth place. But as the Tour continues, we're heading east now, the southeast corner, down towards La Cap d'Agde. The bad news continues. In the past 24 hours, the Tour de France has been sent reeling by more drugs allegations. And this morning, the riders left in the race themselves went on strike. One is now asking the question, will the Tour de France see Paris in 10 days' time? This is the story so far. The revelation started during yesterday's rest day when police swooped on the hotel of the TVM riders and detained team manager Kees Priem, a mechanic, and team doctor Andrei Mikhailov. Drugs are reported since to have been found during the search of the team's hotel. Meanwhile, in Lyon, the headquarters city of the Festina team, all 9 riders excluded from this race last Saturday were also detained to answer allegations made by the team's management, who are in custody in northern France. The Festina riders have now all been released after a tough round of questioning, but not before Laurent Brochard, the world champion, Christophe Moreau and the Swiss rider Armin Meyer all confessed to using drugs while racing. A programme on French television last night showing journalists looking into the waste bins at team hotels for syringes and signs of illegal drugs was, for the remaining riders in the race, the last straw. And this morning, the riders themselves said enough is enough, and led by the top Frenchman, Laurent Jalabert, they went on strike as the race official start approached.
We're sitting on the road at the start. We're not quite sure what's happening or what the teams are hoping to achieve by sitting at the start, but hopefully we'll find out soon and something will be done, either get underway or, I don't know.
Laurent Jalabert said, the riders are disgusted by everything that has gone on. We will not be treated like cattle. Today, we will not take to our bikes. And for an hour this morning, that looked to be the case. But after meetings with the Tour organisation, the field started to move slowly. Jalabert, Marco Pantani and Luc Leblanc were initially said to have withdrawn with their teams. But after a further hour of slow pedalling, the official start was given and all of the riders were in the peloton. The Tour was back on, for now, but further meetings tonight are expected. Well, 2 hours the strike took, but these 3 riders that are about to be caught and swept up have averaged 49 kilometres an hour for something like 3 hours out front. But Nicolas and Laurent Jalabert, Bart Voskamp, are now back in the fold. They were hunting down Laurent Jalabert, of course, because he was only 3 minutes off the yellow jersey. But now it's anybody's guess, and it looks to me as though we've got Jackie Durand trying to get the stage again.
1,000 metres left for Jackie Durand, and he's been away for 23 kilometres, and right behind him the main field is being pulled along by all the teams of the sprinters. And you know what, Phil, it's a very difficult last 500 metres, and look at that long line of the main field boring down upon him.
Well, Jackie's taken full advantage of a breakaway in this tailwind. He's the last survivor of it. He can almost see the finish, but he's now changed direction and the wind is beginning to hurt. And to make matters worse, he's going slightly uphill. He can almost reach out and touch the finishing line here, but the field are coming so quickly and the sprinters are on cue here as they try to drive for the line now. This is going to be almost capture in sight of the finish here for Jackie Durand. The rider's looking over the shoulder here. Zabel is in there too, as he tries to come through in that green jersey, but watch out, to behind Jan Zerada is Tom Steels, and Steels is looking good. Steels has had one win already. This is going to be a very tight finish indeed now, but Steels is perfectly poised because Zerada has totally misjudged it, or indeed has he let his teammate out. He's pushed Zabel way off his line there, and now Tom Steels is heading for win number 2. The first one came in Phoenix Park in Dublin. Nobody's going to get on terms. Tom Steels gets his second stage win, but you have to feel very sorry indeed there for Jackie Durand. He came so close to winning today, but the champion of Belgium now has 2 stage wins, one in Dublin, one in Cap d'Agde, and that is a great result for him, of course. The whole field coming in together and virtually no one behind the race today. This is how you can see the pure sprinter work it out. I think in this case we'll say Zerada was leading out his teammate, but you see he slowed and moved off his line, and that forced Zabel way off his line, and that was a little bit unfair, I think, there, but nonetheless he left Tom Steels out in front, and for Tom Steels, and it's Francois Simon who's coming up there in second place, but for Tom Steels it's a gold again for him at Cap d'Agde. So Steels the victor, but no change at all overall. 1 minute 11 seconds, still the deficit for Bobby Julich, and Jalabert still there in third place as we face up to stage 13. With any thought that the Tour de France might be cancelled, well, they were quickly dispelled last night by Jean-Marie Leblanc, the Director General, who said it was never a consideration. Even so, this morning's papers here are full of the news of the sensational happenings yesterday. Well, now we can go directly to Gary Imlach, who can update us on the first meeting of today, and that's between the riders and the Vice President of the UCI.
Like visiting heads of state, the tribal representatives of world cycling gathered for their summit at a hotel about 5 miles from the stage start. A rider from each team, Laurent Jalabert, the leader of yesterday's protest, most senior among them, and a handful of the Tour's leading team managers. The man they were there to see was Daniel Baal, the French vice president of World Cycling's governing body, the UCI. As 10 and then 11 o'clock came and went, the chances of the race starting on time at 12:15 looked to be shrinking. But with just under an hour to go before the off, Baal emerged to announce peace, or at least what passes for it at this year's Tour.
Bien entendu, tout le monde s'exprime très clairement. Il n'y a pas de raison que le Tour ne continue pas. Le Tour n'est pas synonyme de dopage. Dans ce Tour, on a beaucoup trop parlé de dopage, alors que le problème du dopage n'est pas que le problème du cyclisme. Mais en termes de politique de prévention, nous sommes convenus de nous retrouver avec les représentants des coureurs, les représentants des groupes, les médecins, dès la fin de la saison.
Given that Baal had finished with an optimistic appeal for the riders to be left in peace, Bjarne Riis's concise summary of the morning's proceedings was no surprise.
Bjarne, are the riders pleased with the outcome of the meeting?
I'm sure.
Laurent Jalabert too wasted no time declaring himself satisfied, and as he bummed a lift from his Once team's Spanish rivals Banesto, today's off-the-bike episode of cycling's favourite summer soap was ostensibly over. Well, for all the talk of tighter doping controls and a shared commitment to cleaning up the sport, little of actual substance came out of this morning's meeting. The real purpose of the exercise, I think, was for the UCI to show publicly that they value the riders' opinions and to give them a forum in which to express them. The hope being that they won't feel the need to resort to yesterday's tactics between here and Paris.
Well, let's hope you're right, Gary, but it is stage 13 today, 196 kilometres from Frontignan going to Carpentras. We turn north now. Next stop, of course, will be the Alps. But they're still a couple of days away. 147 riders left in the field. There's the man in the hot seat, Jan Ullrich. He's got his yellow jersey back after having briefly held it in the time trial. And the man in green, looking very solid, Erik Zabel now for a third victory in this competition. Look at his lead here over Tom Steels and Jan Zerada. It'll take some bringing back now, Paul.
It will, but you could see the sequels there on him from the crash he was involved in yesterday, but still he managed to get a place in the sprint at the end. But today is a very difficult day with the Col de Meurs at the end, and that's where I feel the decisive break will happen. Once again, sunny, and look again, high temperatures, 36 degrees Celsius in the latter part of the afternoon, and the wind, 50 kilometres an hour from the northwest, will play havoc in the latter part of the stage.
Well, the majority of the route is flat, but once we swing north towards Carpenter, away from the sea, then it gets a little bit lumpy around about the area of the Col de Meurs. And the breakaway has been on. In fact, there's been breakaways all day today, but this one, as we start the climb of the Col de Meurs, looks as though it might have a chance.
In there, Marty Jemison from the US Postal Service. Just swinging off the front there was Stefan Hurlo, the former champion of France. But two riders from Mapei in there. On the front is Nardello, and in fifth position, the champion of Italy, Andrea Tafi. Now, he's a man looking for the victory this afternoon.
Well, this is Luc Leblanc here, who's also looking to try and get in contact. He's come away from the peloton, which was timed a few minutes ago at 3 3/4 minutes. Tafi's gone over the top there with Nardello. And the remnants of the breakaway, there's still 7 of them though, and Leblanc will be next. He's about 30 seconds ahead of the peloton.
I don't think anyone would have expected an attack to come on this climb, because the heads of state of the Tour de France taking a back seat this afternoon, waiting for the big mountains on the horizon, the Alps. But Luc Leblanc has decided this is a good time to go out and open up an attack, and that's exactly what he's done. And he has around about 30 seconds over the main field, which is being led by Team Telecom.
Well, he's a little bit of a loner, is Luc Leblanc. He always makes his own moves. Here's Bjorn Ries now setting the tempo as he brings the field over the main climb of the day, and Jan Ullrich tucked in not too far behind. The time gap, 3 minutes 43 seconds. Back up with the leaders now, and Tafi very anxious to get that race on the go at the front.
A lot of work at the front being done by Team Telecom, but they're getting help now from Cofidis, and also getting some help from the riders from Mapei.
Well, Leblanc, he really is bashing his head against the wall here, Paul. In fact, I think he's just realised it because he sat up. He's going to wait for them to roll in. He never got much more than half a minute, and I think he's going to hang on now. He told by the helicopter that gave the secret away as to where the peloton was, I think. There he is. He's been picked up by the Telecom primarily. Let's get back up to the leaders here, because this is Tafi, and going down on the inside, Vincente Garcia Acosta.
I think he was a little bit upset by the race profile, because if you look at it in the race Bible, it looks as if it descended all the way down to the finish line. In fact, there's a good portion of flat here before we get into the town of Carpentras, and the winner this afternoon, Phil, certainly is going to come from one of these 6 riders, and it could be a good chance for Marty Jemison, because when it comes down to a sprint at the end, he knows exactly where to place himself.
There's Jemison now coming to the back of the line of the 6 here. The blonde rider in front of him, by the way, is Koos Meurenhout. He comes from the Rabobank team. It's a very nice little working group. This Stefan Hurlo is lying 20th overall, 7 minutes 56 seconds back, and with a lead of 3:22 or 3:21, then he's pulling back quite a big chunk of his deficit today.
The group of riders just behind, in fact trapped in between this leading group of 6 and the main field, are the remnants of that early breakaway, which was 12 riders, and it's split on the Col de Meurs, leaving these 6 riders to go ahead. But every one of these men in the group, Phil, very insistent on going to the front, keeping the pace as high as possible. With 4 kilometres remaining, they must certainly now be thinking about launching a late attack.
And the peloton really should be thinking about pulling them all back here, because Stefan Hurlo, he's in the front group, and he's going to make a big ascension of the overall classification tonight. But they're not going to get them back, Paul, as we're coming up towards the finish now, and the cat and mouse is starting. The gap is still fairly big here. An attack now by Nardello through on the inside.
Good move. Tafi's in second place. He'll close it down as Nardello goes round the corner. In fact, it looks to me as if he didn't take the corner properly there, and he lost all his impetus, and it's come back together. So that was a waste of effort for him.
Well, he misread the bend completely. It went very narrow, that's for sure, and he sat up, but he may not get a second shot at that now. But Nardello sat up, and in fact it's Acosta who's gone through, and now nobody willing to race again, and you can see how narrow the roads are here in Carpentras.
Marty Jemison just shaking his thighs there, just trying to get a little bit more life into them, because the sprint is going to be one of survival. It's a very difficult day out here, very hot indeed, and it may well be the last man to sprint, the last man to wind it up is the one who's going to survive. On the front, Acosta in second place, Koos Meurenhout. In fact, Acosta moving back now to the back of the line, and moving to the front, Stefan Hurlo of France.
Well, this breakaway certainly was for the stage win and not for the big gains, because they're losing big chunks of their advantage now, as the field will continue to race in at high speed. They'll have chopped a minute off in the last kilometre, I would think, But now they're thinking of the stage win. Stefan Erlo is the rider on the front. He had the most to gain on the GC, but he's not going to get a great deal out of it right now. And clearly Taffy is waiting for somebody to start the ball rolling. Jemison is sitting at the back. I would have thought in an ideal position to jump, and he hasn't done so.
He's waiting till the very last minute, and Taffy, I think, also must be thinking about that sprint in Montauban where he led it out, and at the last minute Jackie Durand came over him. He's in an ideal position right on his teammate's wheel, so certainly Nardello is going to lead the sprint out for Andrea Taffy, the champion of Italy this afternoon.
And it's Koos Meurenhout in second place as well, behind Erlo. And then comes Nardello. They're all looking over the shoulder, waiting for somebody else to start the ball rolling. They're making Erlo take the race right up to the line here, but they're going to start coming now. And in fact, a piece of paper has flown onto the face of Stefan Erlo, and there's nothing he can do about it now. He's got rid of it as he now makes the run for the line. But did that affect his sprint? I wonder, because Nardello has come over the top here with such a turn of speed, and that despite the attack he made at 1,500 metres to go. And it looks like this could be a great victory for Daniel Nardello. Acosta is coming very quickly, and Erlo, as he left it too late, because the line is just about on them. Acosta on the right, and it's ever so close, but Nardello believes he's got it. It was a very, very close run thing there by Garcia. Acosta on the right. Just watch the wheels now as they hit the finishing line, because it looked as though the Spanish rider was nearly up at this time. I would say about the width of the racing tyre of Nardello, and there it is confirmed. So the Italian gets the victory, and Taffy from this photograph will finish third. And on the far side, Marty Jemison comes home in 5th place, and here's Paul Sherwin with him now.
Well, Marty, a tough day in the saddle there, and you must have had thoughts over the last few kilometres of a chance of winning a stage.
I did. I didn't give up any chance. Looking around and seeing the big names, it wasn't intimidating at all. I felt like it was right in there. When we first split up, it went down from 12 to the 6 of us. There, I'd gone pretty deep, and I was worried, but I recovered pretty well before the next climb. On the climb, I thought, well, they might give it some stick, but I thought I was just as strong as any of them. They attacked on the hill, covered those pretty well, and then all the way in, I thought, there may be a better sprinter here, but they're not going to outdo me with the psychology. I thought I gave it everything I had.
It split up several times. It looked as if there was a big work being done between Nardello and Taffy. They kept controlling it, but you were always there.
Yeah, I thought they were playing a little bit. I thought maybe they would have played it a little bit more. They were covering Stefan Hülle a little bit. I played that a bit too. I thought that, Taffy and Stefan Hülle were the strongest guys there, and I felt they'll watch each other the closest. But I was really looking for Nardello to escape, but I think he was tired. We're on the same level. As it comes down, I think we were all pretty much on the same level coming into the sprint.
The last 500 meters there, you were in 6th place, an ideal spot to be. You could see everybody else, but maybe the legs just weren't quite strong enough.
No, I think the legs were good. And I think where I was at was really good. I was confident. I was really comfortable, looking for the right wheel. I think I mentioned just a minute ago that, there was I bumped bikes with somebody else twice in the sprint. And I think if that didn't happen, I would have had at least another bike length. That's how much power I had. Look at the film, put one more bike length on it, and that's how strong I am.
It's tough to get so close to a stage victory and just miss out.
Yeah, but I had a good day. I like riding.
Just ask you one final question about Bobby Julich in this Tour de France. Are you surprised how well this American's riding?
The Americans have been stronger and stronger. There's more of us. We give each other, a little bit of confidence, a little bit of pep talk. I support everything Bobby's doing. I think it's the greatest thing for, American cycling to have another person come along and possibly win the Tour de France. He can do it.
Is it motivation for you to see any of the other Americans riding well? George Hincapie rode well in the first week. Now it's Bobby Julich.
I've had motivation for the last couple of months now. Helping George win the U.S. U.S. Pro Championships. And then helping Lance win Luxembourg and the stage race in Germany. Myself placing top 10 in both those and helping Lance win those. I'm having a lot of fun racing. I've been waiting for a long time to have a ride like this in the Tour. I know I'm strong. But I often do work for others, but today was my day.
It certainly was, and a great finish there for Marty Jemison, and Eric Zabel bringing the rest home here. And just on 2 minutes 50-odd seconds down on the day, so there'll be no change overall at all. Zabel will in fact increase his lead in his green jersey competition. But the win going to Daniel Nardello of the MAPE team. That's their full stage win of this Tour so far. And he beats the Spanish rider Garcia Acosta. Overall, no change at Julich, Jalabert, Pantani, Bogert and Luc Leblanc, who had a little dig today, but he's still 6th, 4 minutes 16 seconds back. Well, there's the beauty of the area we are in as we prepare now to head up towards the Alps. You can see them in the distance there. And this will be a reasonably tough day. 186.5 kilometres, still 147 riders left as we now head north towards the Alps. And if anybody is going to challenge Jan Ullrich as this race now passes through the Alps, then it's got to be the American Bobby Julich. He's riding his second tour and something of a mystery to us all. So let's meet him.
Hello, my name is Bobby Julich. I'm 26 years old. I was born in Corpus Christi, Texas. I am 6 foot. Right now in the Tour de France, I'm about 67 kilograms. My home in the United States is Glenwood Springs, Colorado. While in Europe, I live in Nice, France. I am engaged with a girl. Let me do that again, huh? Yeah. I am currently engaged to be married to my longtime fiancée, Angela Morgan. I started cycling in 1984. I turned professional in 1993. I joined Team Cofidis in 1997. Before I came to the Tour de France, I imagined it as just being a Super Bowl every day for 21 days. I respect Jan Ullrich very, very much, but no, I'm not scared of him. I've really seen no weakness in Jan Ullrich up until now, but the Alps are very, very difficult, and anything can happen. I'm surprised to be in this situation, but to be honest, I've always believed in my abilities, and I one day knew that I would be in this situation. So it is a surprise to happen so soon, but I knew it would happen someday.
I think Bobby Julich beginning to enjoy this year's Tour de France, and well he might. He's riding superbly, and so is his team. In fact, this is Laurent Debian. Remember Laurent? He held the lead for a couple of days in the first week of the Tour. He's dropped back a little bit now to 86th, but he's up in the action again, Paul. We've got a break of 6 on.
Yeah, but difficult conditions once again, Phil. Sun out, 20 kilometres per hour southwesterly wind, and again high temperatures, 33 degrees Celsius. So the heat certainly is on in the Tour de France.
I couldn't agree more. It's very oppressive, the weather conditions at the moment, but the breakaway went clear after only 65 kilometres today, and in this breakaway, again, a former yellow jersey Stuart O'Grady, a former yellow jersey in Laurent Debian, a stage winner in Leon Van Bon, and Calcaterra, Rodriguez and Peter Minot is in there as well.
I would think most of the riders in the main field would be quite happy with this breakaway going clear as we are on the slopes now of the Col de Roussay, because for all of the challenges of the Tour de France, the important thing is the Alps tomorrow, and Debian thinks he can get a stage victory because he's gone clear on the run-in.
Well, over the top of the Col, this breakaway had a lead of almost 9 minutes. Now they're trying to scramble for the victory here in the streets of Grenoble. Rodriguez is taking on Laurent Debian, but they're only just ahead of the group. In fact, the man who's been doing an awful lot of chasing down is Stuart O'Grady. He might have chased down just once too often, Paul, because these two have got to march.
They certainly have. Orlando Rodriguez, a very good sprinter. He's brought across to the Banesto team to win stages. He won a stage race last year. He's a very good rider from Portugal, and now he's got himself in the ideal situation. Laurent Debian pushing it at the front, trying to stay clear because he knows for him this is a last-ditch effort.
Well, there's nobody going to alter the overall classification tonight in this breakaway. Tomorrow, though, the Alps may have a different story to tell us, but right now those two riders have gone clear as they came into the long straights here in Grenoble. We're racing right down into the centre of the town. We don't often come here now to Grenoble, and the crowd are waiting for the riders to come in. But it's an opportunist move, and they're flat out, and Rodriguez looks 100% committed.
I'm surprised Rodriguez went with this move because he's got a very good sprint himself when it comes down to the finish of a race, and the work behind under the 2 kilometres to go banner being done by Stuart O'Grady, obviously wanting to pull it all back together. And for Debian, as soon as it slows down, he goes right to the front to keep the pace high. These two riders both working well together.
Well, it must seem an eternity down the street here, and slowly but surely those riders are clawing the way back. So very soon we're going to have 6 men, and in fact Debian is saying, look, they're coming up, come and do something. But I really don't think Orlando Rodriguez can do anything about this now. He's got nothing left.
Very close. It looks to me as if Calcaterra is a man now coming to the front, keeping the pressure on, trying to pull it all back together. These riders have been away for so long now, they just don't want to let the break go clear. There's Van Bon, the winner of the stage in Tepaux. He too is a very smart sprinter when it comes down to the end of a stage like this, and they will all have been waiting for that banner across the line, Phil. The red kite showing them just 1 kilometre to go, 1,000 metres.
Well, it's been touch and go for them all, but Calcaterra is trying to finish it off, and Leon Van Bon is prepared to help him, a silver medalist, or bronze medalist rather, in the World Championships. Leon Van Bon, a double-stage winner in the old Tour du Pont in the United States, but he's come through as a great rider now in the Tour, and this is his 5th time in the Tour de France. 1-stage win already, and they're all together now. Watch out for the trackie. Stuart O'Grady goes to an impossible gap. The typical track move through on the inside and gets onto the back wheel of Debian.
He's right there, but also a good trackman, Van Bon, in 3rd position. He was 2nd in the points race at the Olympic Games in 1992 Barcelona. So these two riders know just exactly how to handle this kind of sprint. A slow start to the sprint, very explosive. O'Grady up into 2nd place, but look at Van Bon right on his wheel.
So we've only got 1-stage winner this year in the Tour de France here. We've got 2 previous yellow jersey wearers, and the rest just hoping for the slice of the glory. Debian, who was the yellow jersey, is being left on the front to be leading out the sprint here for Northern France. But Calcaterra is a dangerous man, and he's digging very deep there. He's holding Stuart O'Grady on his inside. O'Grady's taken the back wheel of Calcaterra now. This might be a good move for O'Grady. Van Bon has pulled out of it a little bit. He seems to not have the legs here, and right on the line. I think the old track push there may have given it to Stuart O'Grady. Let's have a look from the top here. Calcaterra did appear to have this, holding the barriers on his left, but then came O'Grady, and despite a slight move off the line there by Calcaterra, he got it by the width of his tyre. Well, I'm just wondering if the judges might not like the action of Calcaterra there, Paul.
Well, he did move off his line. He came halfway across the road, but you know, the judges, in fact, have just decided to relegate him back into 6th place.
All right, well, the win means a lot to Stuart O'Grady. He's with Paul Sherwin.
Yeah, mate, there was so much going through my head in the last 20k. I was just like, I can't ride all this way and stuff it up in the last kilometre because I know I won't sleep tonight. And the last few k, when a couple of a break took off in the last couple of k, I was getting pretty worried, but just played cards and.
It seemed like you were doing an awful lot of work because every time somebody attacked, it seemed to be you who was chasing them down.
I just didn't want to see someone right off in front of the K to go and flick me by 3 seconds, you know. That'd really annoy me. So, you know, I was maybe doing a little bit much work, but there was a couple of other guys in there that wanted it to come down to a bunch sprint as well, and it's worked out perfect.
Well, here comes the bunch now. They've lost a bit more time today, and they're trying to manoeuvre the finish, indeed, in the favour of Eric Zabel. He seems to have a nice little habit of cleaning up the bunch, an awful long way back on the eve of the Alps. But here comes Zabel, gritting his teeth, and a few more green jersey points are going in the bag as Robbie McEwen just finishes on his back wheel. 10 minutes back. Stuart O'Grady so becomes the 3rd Australian ever to win a stage of the Tour de France, behind Phil Anderson and Neil Stevens. This has been a dream tour for him, the yellow jersey, and now a stage win. All smiles for Stuart. He's having a great season too, with victory in the British Pro Tour as well. On to Les Deux Alpes, a new finishing venue now for the Tour de France, and the stage awaits the enactment of this race in the Alps. And the riders heading out on stage 15. The mountains are there for us all to see, and it's 189 kilometres to the high spot of the day at Les Deux Alpes, which, by the way, is the parallel valley to Alpe d'Huez. Jan Ullrich the lead of the Tour by 1 minute and 11 seconds. Laurent Jalabert still equal with Marco Pantani, 3 minutes 1 second. Then comes Bogart and Luc Leblanc. But I'll tell you what, there'll be changes today. It's only a matter of knowing which way they are changing. Well, this is the finishing line of Les Deux Alpes, and the clouds are sweeping across the top of the mountains today, and in fact it is cold and chilly. It hasn't affected the crowd at all because they've come to what is the last mountaintop finish of this year's Tour de France, and as Italy is not very far away from here, you can imagine who they want to see first to the top today.
C'est Circo Pantani.
Pantani, Pantani.
Marco Pantani.
Marco Pantani.
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 Pantani. Aussi Pantani.
Well, the Little Imp has all the qualifications for today's stage, Paul, with the Col de Croix de Fer, the Col de Telegraph, Col de Glibier, and then the tough climb up to Les Deux Alpes.
All he can hope is that there's no breakaways go on the early parts of this stage this afternoon, and a man sitting at the rear of the main field for the moment in the yellow jersey, Jan Ullrich, but he'll be challenged certainly today, Phil, by Bobby Julich.
I'll tell you what, I don't think he expected Pantani to become such a challenger that he has become since this race left Dublin. He was so far behind after the prologue, it seemed he was not interested. But 3 minutes off the lead, and it's very possible now he could snatch the yellow jersey away from Jan Ullrich.
Especially in these conditions, Phil.
Yeah.
Rain and very low temperatures, 12 degrees Celsius, and you can see already on the first climb of the day, a lot of riders being left behind. This is the Col de la Croix de Fer.
And now, as we move on towards the Col de Galibier, conditions haven't changed at all here. Adolfo Massi has picked up both climbs of the Col de Croix de Fer and the Col de Telegraph. The conditions here on the Galibier are quite atrocious now. We're going up to the highest point of this year's Tour de France, and Pantani isn't going to wait. We're a long way from the top and a long way from the finish here, and nobody has reacted.
I make it 11 kilometres to go to the summit here, Phil, and Pantani has not waited. In fact, he's looking over his shoulder to see if there's any reaction behind, and it's coming from Luc Leblanc. Now, this man crashed on the first climb of the day, the Col de Croix de Fer. It didn't seem to affect him at all, and now he's got help, and that's what he wants, because there's an awful long way to go to the finish from the top of the Col de la Galibier, but it looks as if Luc Leblanc is in serious difficulty.
Well, he's tried to go across to Pantani, but I don't think he's going to even get onto him here, because the weather is bad, and I think Luc Leblanc is thinking better of the attack here. Certainly no reaction at all from Ullrich, content to set the tempo, because remember, this attack has gone very early. Once we go down off the Galibier, we run through the valley before we climb up to the finish at Les Deux Alpes, and this has caused all sorts of consternation now.
Christophe Renero is up the road as well. He's put a great performance in this afternoon. He's trying to set the road alight for the Cofidis team. He's trying to set something up for Bobby Julich, because today is the day in the Alps that Bobby Julich said he could challenge Jan Ullrich. He's always favoured the Alps over the Pyrenees, and certainly that's why Team Cofidis have gone out. But Marco Pantani this afternoon has gone out to do something very special. But from the top of the Galibier, Phil, there's 45 kilometres to go to the finish. That's an awful long way to go.
It certainly is. Jean-Cyril Robin sitting at the back of this league group here for the US Postal and riding a good solid race at the moment. Cofidis again have planted a lot of good riders in this front group, including Bobby Julich and Christophe Renero. And I'll tell you what, Renero rode his first Tour de France last year and he only finished 115th. He's been a totally different rider this year so far. This group thinning down drastically. Leonardo Pipoli again flying the flag for Seiko at the back of the group. This is Baranowski, I think.
Baranowski at the front for US Postal Service. US Postal having a great day in the mountains as well. They too will be moving up in the overall team standings. Sitting in second place there, Bobby Julich, I think, waiting for the moment when he's going to launch an attack, and obviously using a lot of common sense and tactics there. Ullrich is leaving the others there to do the work, because he realises they too are under pressure from Pantani.
Well, we're looking at the back here of Renero, but further up the road is Marco Pantani. And he has gone... No, sorry, there's Renero is leading on the slopes. This is Pantani coming up to him here. And Pantani has closed this gap quite sensationally. Renero was third over the Croix de Fer. He was second over the Col de Telegraph. And now he's going to have to hang on to the Flying Pirate if he gets up to him, and I think he will.
What a move by Pantani there. He's going to pick up Christophe Renero, who was away at the bottom of this climb now, and I'm sure he will go straight by him. But there's an awful long way to go to the finish, and he's not too happy about the encouragement from the spectators. This is a very dangerous pastime. These spectators try and run alongside their favourites, and many riders in the past, Phil, have actually been knocked off by spectators doing this, which is why I think such a reaction coming from Pantani.
Well, Jose Maria Jimenez from Benesto, he's a good climber, but he's found his hands full here now because Pantani has got to the front. Renero is doing well to grit his teeth. We're coming up towards the summit, but there's still a little way to go on the Galibier yet. We're losing the actual grass line and getting the barren side of this mountain. And all of a sudden, the rest are being left to make the pace. Julich also on the front now of the chase group. This is a serious move today by Marco Pantani. Remember, just over 3 minutes behind overall at the start of this stage. He's no longer looking for stage wins, Paul.
He certainly isn't. He's trying to blow the Tour de France apart this afternoon. Now, there is one of the Team Soigneurs, I think, from the Mercatoni squad. Now, that is probably an illegal move there, passing up a bottle to Pantani and also passing up a racing cape. Now, this is a very difficult manoeuvre there, trying to put this on a descent at 50 or 60 kilometres an hour. And the picture breakup is because we're not using helicopters this afternoon. We're actually using an aeroplane above the race because the cloud cover is so low.
And the aeroplane, by the way, is having to fly at 27,000 feet to bring us these pictures because of the mountains all around. And in fact, what you said has come to fruition, Paul. He stopped to put the cape on, and I think somebody slipped through on the inside of him. And so he's no longer first on the road, but I don't think it's too serious.
Well, those two riders who came through were Raniero, and in fact, the other rider from Banesto was Jimenez. So they two have now made a three-man group at the front. Now, that's a very intelligent thing to do by Pantani there, because if he tried to change, he may well have come off, and in fact, it looks as if somebody's gone off the road there.
Well, somebody's gone behind that caravan. It looks as though it might be Bobby Julich in the corner there. It is. Julich's going straight on. He was trying to put his cape on as well.
Well, he lost it going around the corner there, obviously deciding to go straight on instead of trying to turn around there, and he's going to be quite scared on the descent now. He's obviously used that opportunity to stop and put his cape on. He's trying to wrap it up now. All of these riders trying to keep as warm as possible because it's very difficult. Phil, there's a problem here with the yellow jersey.
Well, the yellow jersey, I think, has got a flat tyre, and it's another puncture here. We're not very far away from the climb of Les Deux Alpes either, and the weather conditions have closed in, and once again, Jan Ullrich is finding the Tour de France is not his friend.
Well, on the slope of the Deux Alpes already, Marco Pantani has started to climb up towards the finish, but that was a very slow wheel change for Jan Ullrich there, picking his way through the cars, and you can see there, this town we're coming into now is the start of the climb, Les Deux Alpes, so Jan Ullrich once again in difficulty at the bottom of a mountaintop finish.
Well, we are going to struggle to bring you the pictures now, but that is the time gap, I presume, back to the Jan Ullrich group, and that is 4 minutes, which puts Pantani in the yellow jersey now, and already Ullrich is out of it. What an amazing tour this is turning out to be, and we're still being run off at record speed.
And the big problem for Ullrich this afternoon is he does not have any teammates with him. They've all been left behind on the slopes of the Galibier, and Marco Pantani is riding a time trial here to what for him I think is going to be a second victory, because he's not showing any signs of being affected by the cold weather. He hasn't got a raincoat on now. He's obviously thrown that away, and he's going to ride up this mountain as fast as he can.
Well, we've been treated to this man in the Pyrenees. Now, what are they going to do about him here in the Alps? But at least there's some reaction coming. Bobby Julich trying to get away from the front of the group now and put some time into Ullrich as well.
Well, he should have gone when Pantani went, but now he's trying to save as much as he can. He's gone away at the bottom of the Deux Alpes. The reaction behind was coming from Michael Bogard, but the drama further back, Phil, is Jan Ullrich cannot get into a rhythm, and in fact he's losing time on the Bobby Julich group, and still he has nobody to help him.
It appeared initially he was coming back, but he looks to me as though he's not just cracked physically, he's cracked mentally here. And the way he's dropped back now, he's a very lonely rider indeed. Nobody around to help him, and his Tour de France could be running away from him. And I never thought we'd say that this year.
Well, that's the difference between being at the front of the race and being at the back. Marco Pantani won't be feeling the cold at the moment. All he's thinking about is concentrating on keeping his pace high, getting to the top of this mountain as quickly as possible. He's had success in the Alps before. In fact, on the other side of the valley to where we are now at Alpe d'Huez, where he won on 2 occasions. Today, he's looking to put another alpine stage on his credits.
Well, he's magnificent when he's in full flight, but in weather conditions like this, we are looking now at time gaps which might take us back into the mid-50s.
These conditions, Phil, are unbelievable. That was Udo Bolt. In fact, he has caught up with Jan Ullrich and he's trying to pace him, but it looks as if the German has completely cracked. I think, as you said, his mind has gone. He's not on the job anymore. He's just trying to survive. He's going to try and take this raincoat off, throw that away to the crowd. But for him, he really has to concentrate to keep himself in the Tour de France this afternoon.
Well, he's very, very unhappy, that's for sure now. He's a little bit confused as well, is young Jan Ullrich. The Tour de France, he obviously didn't have the right depth of his form. We were wondering if he was overweight. He certainly isn't that, but I'm wondering too if his preparation hasn't been quite right this year. And Pantani is now going to find out the answer to that, because he is putting home the attack here. He is gaining minutes over the rest of the race. Here's Bogart now, but still staying in the frame.
Well, there's Bobby Julich as well, setting the pace, trying to pull back a little bit of time on Marco Pantani, but it's slipping away. 4 minutes and 4 seconds, 41 seconds behind him is Jan Ullrich. So Ullrich is slipping away, and Bobby Julich could be riding himself into the yellow jersey.
And there is now, Rees has now picked up Jan Ullrich, so it's looking as though he might get a little bit of help at hand here. Van der Voer, who's had a good race so far, he's also come into the frame for Lotto, but with every respect to the youngster, he shouldn't be riding alongside Jan Ullrich at this moment in time.
One would expect Jan Ullrich to be a lot further up the slopes than he is now, but you know, it must have been a psychological blow. The last time we had a mountaintop finish, he punctured at the bottom. Today he's done exactly the same thing, but the weather conditions are atrocious, and I think psychologically he's cracked. He's got to snap himself out of it and get back into some kind of concentration to stop losing time on Marco Pantani. But for the moment, Marco Pantani riding himself into the yellow jersey because he's almost 5 minutes ahead of Ullrich on the road.
Well, this is truly unbelievable here. Bobby Julich also staying in the thick of the action and trying to hold or at least limit his losses here to Pantani. Remember, he's fighting to hold on to second place overall in the Tour de France, and it's not no longer to Jan Ullrich, it is now to Marco Pantani. And you know, I keep thinking about Les Deux Alpes because they got the Tour away from Alpe d'Huez. The first time the Tour has been here. It's probably the most dramatic day we've seen in Tour history, in modern Tour history, and they've got weather like this.
It's quite a shame, but it really has created a dramatic race. Here's Bjarne Riis now trying to come back up to Jan Ullrich. It's as if the whole of the Telefcom team have been devastated this afternoon. The racing has actually been up the Deux Alpes before because the Tour of Italy came here several years ago. On that stage, it was Marco Pantani's teammate Bobrick who won the stage, and Pantani had a very bad day then. But today it looks as if he's turned the tables around because he's flying up this mountain and really writing his name into a legendary mountain stage of the Tour de France.
Well, as we saw earlier, this mountain is for the Italians today. The borders are not very far away as the road goes on towards Sestriere. And Marco Pantani is giving the Tifosi exactly what they wanted to see. But I don't think even they believed they were going to see more than this man win the stage, and they are. They're going to see this man pull on the maillot jaune.
Incredible. He's starting to weaken a little bit now, but after the breakaway that he's put in, that's not surprising. Bobby Julich looking very comfortable, punching away at the pedals. This man has come to the Alps. This is where he feels that his ability is much better. He doesn't like the steep, difficult climbs of the Pyrenees, but these longer ones in the Alps he feels resembles the roads of Colorado, which is why he's putting the pressure on today. He can feel there's a possibility for him to climb up above Ullrich in the overall standings, and why not a yellow jersey at the end of the day? But that, I think, Phil, is going to be taken away from him by Marco Pantani, who really is doing the ride of the day.
Just thinking there that Julich, Paul, now he's moved across to live in Philadelphia. Training on the Manny-Yunk wall is going to feel pretty easy after this year's Tour de France.
It will do. It's not exactly the slopes of the Deux Alpes. You'll have to take the Manny-Yunk wall about 15 times to put it in perspective with the Deux Alpes. At the back now of the group, you can see two Telecom riders with the man wearing number 1 as last year's winner, Jan Ullrich. Bjarne Riis and Udo Bolts, they're trying to muster up a little bit of support for him, some morale boosting. They'll be talking to him, explaining to him that he needs to get back into some kind of concentration to keep his pedaling going. Over 4.5 minutes now for Marco Pantani on the chasers.
And I think that might well be to Bobby Julich, and further back even to Jan Ullrich right now. But over the years, you know, the way the journalists have tried to build this rivalry between Bjarne Riis and Jan Ullrich, of how competitive they are to one another. Now we have Riis here waiting for Jan Ullrich and trying to coax him up to the summit.
Well, Ullrich realises now that he has got a great teammate in the shape of Bjarne Riis. Riis is a very experienced rider, 34 years of age now. He will know exactly what is going through Ullrich's mind, and he'll be coaxing him like a master to the pupil. Now the pupil has become of age, but still he needs somebody around him just to keep him calm in situations like this.
Well, this is the one day in a Tour leader's life you hope never comes, and they always say it does one day, and it's come pretty early to Jan Ullrich. Remember, it happened to Miguel Indurain, but not until he'd won the Tour 5 times first. Bobby Julich, well, this is his second Tour de France. He wants a place on the podium in Paris. Now he's having to fight for it. Second overall this morning. He's now riding second on the road. He's holding second overall at the moment, but it's behind Marco Pantani. I bet you even Bobby Julich never thought he would be going ahead of Jan Ullrich. And Bogert is coming onto the scene, and he's flying.
A great ride by the Dutch champion. He really has come to fruition in this year's Tour de France. Wearing number 51 there, your favourite number, the number that's won the Tour de France on so many occasions. I don't think it's going to be Bogart this year, but what a ride by this young man from Holland.
Yeah, Bogart, again, a man that's always felt he could do something special in the Tour de France. There aren't many Dutchmen race for the overall classification. There's only been 1 or 2 over the years, but it looks as though Michael Bogart is going to be a man who will feature all the way to Paris. This man certainly will now. Marco Pantani still has another couple of days in the Alps as well to build more time, and if he gets a big enough time gap before that last long time trial, he may do what he did in the Tour of Italy and take this race out.
But while Jan Ullrich is trying to survive on the slopes of this mountain, Rodolfo Massi is currently lying second on the road, and he's about 1.5 minutes behind Marco Pantani. And Fernando Escartin has flown the coop as well, because he's slipped away from Bobby Julich, and he's currently lying third on the road. So the Tour de France this afternoon certainly turning upside down.
And the weather is not easing at all. It has been torrential all day. It blows through at the summit and it goes off for a matter of seconds. The next cloud comes over. It is very cold as well. And I think now Jan Ullrich knows all about the other face of the Tour de France, the chasing group, because Pantani is in his element.
Pantani always getting out of the saddle, always accelerating to keep his pace as high as possible, because he realizes with 2 kilometers to go that as much time as he can has to be gained today, because from here on in the terrain is not to his liking. It's much flatter and there's a big time trial to come before we get up to Paris. So today is the day he really has to put the hammer down if he wants to climb up the overall standings of the Tour de France and hope of a yellow jersey or hope of a place on the podium in Paris.
Well, he's been on the podium in Paris twice before. He's had 2 third places. But now's his chance to have a shot at the yellow jersey. He's off to a good start because the Maillot Jaune is waiting for him now at the finish. The road's all newly surfaced for the arrival of the Tour here, so at least the climb will feel comfortable under the wheels, but I'm not so sure about the legs.
Bobby Julich's losing an awful lot of time, over 4.5 minutes on Marco Pantani, and Jan Ullrich, Phil, looks to me as if he's almost stopped. It doesn't look as if he has any energy left in his body at all, and if it wasn't for the 2 teammates with him, I think he may well have abandoned the Tour de France on this day.
Well, look at this now. Ullrich officially is 6 minutes and 10 seconds back now as Jimenez goes down on the inside of them. He was up with Pantani at one stage and he's completely blown. Jan Ullrich is suffering badly here. 6 minutes, I can't believe it.
Another man who's been blown out of the water this afternoon as well is Laurent Jalabert. He's nowhere to be seen at the moment. He cracked on the slopes of the Col de la Galibier, and at the moment he's around about 10 or 12 minutes behind the leading group of riders. Today's stage has caused some serious time gaps in the whole of this field, but look at the eyes of Jan Ullrich. He really is having great difficulty supporting this bad weather.
Well, it's bitterly cold as well, and he's been trying to squint through atrocious conditions with driving rain, often so cold, almost hailstones today. Hasn't affected Pantani, though. The little man has danced once again to the summit of a mountain in the Tour de France. This will be, I think, his 6th stage win in the Tour de France over the years, his 2nd of this year's Tour. And this is going to be one of the sweetest, I think, because now the Maglia Rosa of the Giro d'Italia can be joined by its partner, the Maillot Jaune of the Tour de France.
Well, it really has been a tough day for everyone in the Tour de France this afternoon. Although it was 12 degrees Celsius in the valley roads, over the top of the big mountains, especially the Col de la Galibier, the temperature plummeted to 4 degrees Celsius, which is only just above freezing, which is why so many of these riders this afternoon have suffered like they have.
And almost 6 hours in the saddle as Marco Pantani comes into view of the crowd at the top of Les Deux Alpes. And again, a very fast stage, 33 kilometers an hour. So he's done it again. He's this time, though, what he wants is waiting for him. When he saw the route back in October, he said, the Tour isn't for me, I'll come out and win stages. He seemed to confirm that with a terrible prologue time, and now in the Pyrenees and the Alps, he's come right back into the reckoning. And Bobby Julich will not let go of this year's Tour de France. He continues on as he races now up to the finish. Also already gone through is Christophe Renero, so Julich will get 5th on the stage. And a lot further down, watch the time on the right here. Ullrich is 9 minutes back today. Nobody would have put a bet on that. Our camera's unable to follow Massi, Escartin and Renero, but Bobby Julich was right in there, and I bet he was surprised today by the performance of Marco Pantani.
Yeah, I sure was. I mean, obviously he wasn't affected by these adverse conditions at all. I mean, I felt totally blocked on the Galibier, totally froze on the descent, and didn't really feel good at all at the end. You know, I just went and tried to limit my losses to him, but I mean, he still took 6 minutes out of us or whatever, and that's not even funny. I mean, but you know, there's a long way to go, and Marco's a proven champion, and he should have the leadership in the Tour de France after a day like today. You know, he seems to perform under any condition, and just my hat goes off to him for sure.
You're surprised to see Ullrich crack today, although he did have the flat tire at the bottom of the climb. He then went to pieces.
I don't know what happened. All I know is that today is very, very unpredictable. Anything can happen because of the weather.
to tell you the truth, he was very, very strong. I mean, I don't know what happened. I didn't even know he flatted. We just came to the bottom of the climb, and I was just trying to limit my losses to Pantani. I expected Ullrich to be right with me, but I mean, we all have our bad days, we all have our problems, and I'm sure he'll recover and have a great Tour de France anyways.
And you're still second overall, so still some hopes about winning this race?
There's always a hope.
Well done, Bobby. Of course, there's always a hope. This is the Tour de France, and he still stays second overall, despite this man, a tornado that blew through the Alps on a great ride. Marco Pantani, the top dog in the Tour de France now. He pulls on the Maillot Jaune as race leader, and it's the closest the race will come to Italy, leading Bobby Julich by 3 minutes and 53 seconds. Interesting to see there, Cofidis have 2 men in the top 5 overall, as our second day in the Alps takes us to Albertville, 204 kilometres. Pantani's the man. Even if your name is Marco Pantani and you see the mountains as your friends, could you have prophesied that you would fall off on one climb, attack on the next, be so cold you stopped to pull on a jacket, and then finish 9 minutes in front of the leader to claim the Maillot Jaune in the Tour de France? Of course not. But the little remarkable Italian did just that in the race yesterday. Last night, though, he was under no illusions as to the standard of his achievement.
Con un tempo incredibile, perché ho sempre sofferto un po' il freddo e questa mattina ero molto nervoso, come si conviene nelle tappe che contano, e poi sono caduto in salita, ho sbattuto il ginocchio, mi sono un po' innervosito e poi niente, sono riuscito a rimanere sempre coi primi, e poi un attacco da lontano, perché era, penso, l'unica possibilità di provare qualche cosa diciamo di importante. Non ci credevo, perché sai, non pensavo di avere questa forza di resistere a così a lungo.
But he did, and he has become the most popular leader of the Tour de France for many years. He is now 3 minutes 53 seconds ahead of Bobby Julich. Poor Jan Ullrich, he's dropped back to 4th at almost 6 minutes. Well, 17 days ago, Marco Pantani finished 181st in the prologue in Dublin. It seemed he'd come to the Tour resting on his laurels as winner of the recent Giro d'Italia. By finishing in the bunch every day, he arrived in the Pyrenees in 47th place, 8 minutes 27 seconds back. Then he moved. On stage 10 in the Pyrenees, he climbed to 11th. Next day, he won to climb up to 3rd place overall, and on his first day in the Alps, he destroyed the field. And after that remarkable day yesterday, everybody now asking the question, has Marco Pantani gained enough time to win the Tour de France when you consider there is still a long time trial to come? Well, he showed us this year in the Tour of Italy when he's the leader of a big-time stage race, he can ride a time trial well. And for that reason, I think he has gained enough time. But what about Jan Ullrich? That spectacular collapse yesterday, will he even continue in this Tour? Here's Gary Imlach now to update us.
The only excess baggage Jan Ullrich was carrying up the climbs yesterday was under his eyes. But at least one former Tour winner believes that it may have been the weight he put on in the winter that cost him the stage, if not the race.
Je pense que ça peut être une explication de sa défaillance hier. Il a dû, ces derniers mois, fournir de gros efforts pour revenir en forme. Et peut-être qu'il le paye maintenant avec le froid, les changements de température, les efforts.
Ullrich himself blamed the weight of the yellow jersey, saying it had been a mistake to take the race lead so early and have to work hard to defend it. This morning, having been relieved of the responsibility, he was back in the pink.
Well, and on the start line for this 204-kilometre stage, because a lot of his German friends in the media thought he wouldn't come out to race today, but I hope his morale has recovered completely and Jan Ullrich can still challenge Marco Pantani, because this man is feeling pretty confident now.
He must do too, because he realises the only threat that this man Jan Ullrich can give to him is in the final time trial. But look at Ullrich there, he's got plasters on his knees and also behind his knee on his right leg there as well. That's obviously some form of tendon problem after the cold of yesterday.
Well, on these early parts of the stage, the riders all around. There's the wind speed, very low today, coming up from the south, and 68 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a nicer day in prospect as we climb, of course, the big daddy of them all, the Col de la Madeleine, which comes near the end, Paul.
Very difficult climb, and I know it well because in one of the Tour de France's that I didn't finish, I actually abandoned there on the slopes of the Col de la Madeleine. But it's a tricky day through the Alps, and this early break of 3 riders picking their way down the first descent of the day. And you can see in the middle there, André Tituriak has actually taken a very bad line there, Phil.
You could say that. He completely misjudged the bend there, Tituriak. Well, I'll tell you what, this isn't the same rider. This is another rider on the same bend from the same team, and this is, in fact, Verbrugge of the Lotto team, Rick Verbrugge. He went down exactly the same point on the descent of the Col de Port. We're now moving across to the Col de la Madeleine, where the action's at the front, and my goodness me, it is, because this is Jan Ullrich having the audacity to attack right at the start of the climb. Only Pantani is going after him.
Pantani's having a hard time getting up to the wheel as well. What a turnaround for the books there. Jan Ullrich blown away yesterday's comeback. Today, Phil, he's proving that he's a real champion, trying to put the yellow jersey into difficulty, and behind Piepoli trying to respond. Good reaction by Marco Pantani, but I think that will have ruffled his feathers.
And that's Escartine crawling all over his bicycle here to try and get up to make it a leading group of 4, and he's just about on. But in fact, Ullrich is keeping the pressure on here. Pantani is just going to try and control him at this early stage, I think. The Col de la Madeleine is a vicious climb. It will take a brave man or a confident one to attack quite as early as Jan Ullrich has done. Look at the gap he's open now. And Bobby Julich, remember, is still in this group along with his teammate Raniero.
There's Bobby Julich there in second place. Alongside him is Raniero, who's keeping the pace high, pacing his man Bobby Julich. And further up the road, the man who really lit the race alight, Stefan Hurlo, trying to ride himself high in the overall standings, but he would not have expected the attack to come from Jan Ullrich.
Hurlo's been out front all day since the start of the Col de Port with Aldag and Tituriak, and one by one they've been chiselled out. He won the climb of the Port, the climb of the Crucheron, and he was second over the Granier. Look at this attack, Paul. This is the way to do it.
This is the way to do it. He looked at all of his compatriots there in the breakaway to see just how they were riding. He could see a lot of them already in difficulty and said, right, now's the time for me to go. And he almost caught Marco Pantani unawares, but the Italian leader of the Tour de France decided to respond quite dramatically. One advantage, though, Phil, for the man Jan Ullrich, in fact, is Rolf Aldag, who was in the earlier breakaway, is still a little way up the road in front of him.
Well, he certainly hasn't come into our camera lens yet, although I don't think he's going to have much joy in hanging on to these two when they pick him up. Ullrich is riding superbly again. One bad day. Has he lost the Tour de France? It's now a huge question mark, you know, because he's going clear now, and Bobby Julich is the man being damaged by this attack. Pantani is just sitting there, and why shouldn't he? Because the yellow jersey now is on his shoulders.
The big losers on that attack there looks to be Team Cofidis, because there on the front was Roland Meyer. Second position was Christophe Raniero and Bobby Julich using his teammates. Now they're the ones who've been put in the position of defence. They have to try and respond to that attack by Jan Ullrich, and I don't think anyone would have expected that to happen after this man lost 9 minutes yesterday.
There must have been some heavy talking last night in the hotel. It wouldn't surprise me if Bjarne Riis and Udo Bolt didn't sit down the young Ullrich and say to him, look, this happens in the big tours, you've got to recover, and tomorrow hit them hard on the Madeleine and see what happens. And what has happened is that only Pantani has gone with him, and Pantani isn't going to help him at all, and he's no reason to.
He has no reason at all. He's in the position of defence. He's the leader of the Tour de France, and Jan Ullrich is attempting to dislodge him from that position. But what a great move. Ullrich is showing the power that he has on a climb like this, sitting down using a very big gear. You can see here the difference in styles as Pantani's out of the saddle, punching at the pedals as often as he can.
Well, this is Meyer again, who rode so well in the mountains and now trying to pull up the Cofidis team. As a team, they are almost untouchable in the team classification of this race. They've ridden so well as a group, and this despite losing their leader on the very first day in the mountains, Casagrande. But Julich now, I wonder what he's thinking now, because he knows that these top two boys are riding away from him, and if they're well clear over the top of the Madeleine, I don't see anybody pulling them back. Here's the remnants of the breakaway. It looks as though Hurlo is clear on his own, but Tituriak and Aldag's seen his teammate coming. Now there's a teammate for you. He's still found the strength to accelerate.
Aldag certainly gets #1 today for Team Domestique. He's been in the breakaway very early on. He went out there because they felt as if Telecom had lost the Tour de France, and now the table has completely turned, and he's finding some strength, I don't know from where, to try and pace his man Jan Ullrich just a little bit further. He will push himself for the next kilometre or so, but he won't last, Phil, because he cannot match the big engine that Jan Ullrich has.
Well, it's been only half a season for Aldag, having had an accident right at the start of it, but he seems to have found his legs in time for the Tour. He's such a valuable helper on the Team Telecom. And now he's just trying to give Ulrich a little bit of a break halfway up the climb before he dies and drops away from the leaderboard here, Aldag. And then it'll be one-on-one again. But hats off to Rolf Aldag. This takes a lot of courage.
A lot of courage and a lot of pain. You can see the pain on his face. You can almost feel what he's going through. But for him, all he's thinking about now is trying to turn the tables, trying to put Marco Pantani into difficulty and give his teammate Jan Ullrich a little bit of a breather. Team manager Walter Godefroot coming along in the team car there, just giving him a shout, giving him a little bit of encouragement to help him push himself just that little bit further.
It's a 12-mile climb of the Col here, and at the moment they're still climbing on the top chain rings, which gives you some idea under attack here how they keep the pressure on. The gap is opening dramatically over the rest of the field, and surely we're not going to see the sort of time gaps we saw yesterday.
Well, that's it for Rolf Aldag. He did his turn. It lasted about 1 kilometre, just enough to give Jan Ullrich a breather, and now he picks it up once again on the flatter part of this climb. I say the flatter part is all the way up to the top, a 12-mile climb, but some of the inclines are not quite as steep. But when it does level out a little bit, then Jan Ullrich can get his big gear going, get his big engine, and look at that, the shadow of Rolf Aldag just disappears from the scene.
Well, among the riders going out today, Jans Renata, the sprinter, so we won't see him in the closing stages trying to win the sprints, and also Jimenez, Jose Maria Jimenez from the Benesto team, also retired during the stage today so far.
Stefan Erlo still the lone leader now with a 55-second advantage over the train. But look at the difference in the speed, Phil. He's almost stopped. He's been out at the front of this race for a long time. A very aggressive rider. Himself a former wearer of the yellow jersey in the Tour de France. In fact, he was the last man to abandon wearing the yellow jersey before Chris Boardman did this year.
And he did that with tendinitis on top of a mountain as well. But now he's about to see the two strongest riders, I think it's a fair comment to say that now, in this year's Tour de France, make the way up towards him. And Jan Ullrich, well, now this is a champion, a man who has won the Tour de France. He blew big time yesterday and has come out the very next day and put in an attack like this. You can't be any more full of admiration of him right now than we are, but he's still got to get rid of Pantani, and Pantani has that lovely feeling of having big time protection now between him and the man who wears number 1.
All he has to do is mark the attack, mark the rhythm of Jan Ullrich at the moment, because he's making big time gaps over the rest of the field as well. But look at this, they've pulled back that 55 seconds in no time at all, Phil, and very shortly another man will be dispatched and we'll have two leaders out on the road. Number 1, Jan Ullrich, number 21, Marco Pantani. I'm sure will get rid of Stefan Erlo as soon as they ride by him.
I just wonder, he's looking over, he looks very, very tired now. Has he got any strength in those legs? When you see these two riders come through, you're going to have to feel pretty special to jump on the back wheel. There's a sort of half-hearted attempt here by Stefan Erlo to try and hold on to Pantani, who's clearly pedaling a lower gear than Ullrich. But Ullrich is pounding that big gear and distancing already, Stefan.
Certainly was a lot of talking went on last night, I would think. The coach of Jan Ullrich was on the phone, Peter Becker. He would have been explaining to him, look, you are a great champion. You can't walk away from the Tour de France. And certainly our friends from the German television felt that Jan Ullrich would not start the stage this morning, but he's come out, and he's come out fighting to prove that he is a great champion. At 23 years of age, he's bounced back from that terrible day he had yesterday, and he's going out to fight the Tour de France all the way up to Paris.
Well, he slipped away from the overall podium positions, but I think he's getting himself back up there in one fell swoop today on the second day in the Alps. There's still more days still to come, though the hills get a little bit less severe. And that was why Pantani said he could never win this Tour, because the route wasn't tough enough. But I guess he wasn't reckoning on a Tour quite as controversial as this one is certainly turning out to be. So Jan Ullrich now, his face a picture of pain, but it's a different sort of a pain now. This one is a pain of aggression rather than a pain of defeat.
Well, his face still showing the markings of that terrible day yesterday. I think he had a hard time with that cold weather. He wasn't able to support it. I think his muscles really did suffer from the coldness getting in there. He's also probably paid from the fact that he lost a lot of weight coming up to the Tour de France much too quickly, and that's why he had that very bad day yesterday on the climb to Les Deux Alpes. But Marco Pantani, once he sees the top of this climb, I think will be quite relieved, because he now knows that there's not much more that Jan Ullrich can do. It's all downhill to the finish in Albertville.
On with the arm warmers. Excuse me, can I have my cape? Thanks a lot. And Ullrich goes over the top first at the top of the Col de la Madeleine, an all-category climb, maximum points there. That will make a great deal of difference to his standings in the mountains. Pantani second over the top now. It is the best part of 20 miles now, basically all downhill into Albertville. And I'm always amazed when I say that the race has never finished in or started for that matter, in Albertville before. It was the Olympic city, of course, back in the Winter Olympic Games of 1992.
Strangely enough, there are so many towns the Tour de France goes to, you're quite convinced that it's been there many times before. The Tour's been through Albertville, but it never has actually finished there, and this will be the first time that the Tour goes down there. And what a day, because Jan Ullrich is bouncing back in this year's Tour de France. Pantani still for the moment not doing any work at all, and the chasing group with Axel Merckx slipping in there over 2 minutes back.
Piepoli takes them over in third place. And in fact, Julich just behind Piepoli there. Escartin is here, Renero is here, Bogart is in the group as well. Bjarne Riis is hanging on the back just behind Axel Merckx. A very select little group that now. As we make our way down, not a big wide road descent like the Galibier, the Col de la Madeleine. It's a little bit twisty and tortuous as the riders now pick their way gently down towards the valley. But the climbing for the day is behind them, and Ullrich's attack has only succeeded in ridding him of everyone except the one man he wanted to rid himself of.
There's Stefan Hurlo. He's been picked up by the chasing group, obviously suffering a lot there, stretching his leg back up there to try and get a bit of freedom back into those muscles. And he's in the group now, which has been joined as well by Jean-Cyril Robin. But a great ride there in third position. You can just make out Axel Merckx. He was 11th on yesterday's big mountain stage. Didn't make much noise about it, but Axel in his first Tour de France is climbing himself well up into the overall rankings.
Which will be a great result for him in his first Tour. Anyway, 1 kilometre to go now. We're running in towards the finish in Albertville. And it looks as though we're going to see a sprint between these two. It reminds me of the arrival of Tony Rominger and Miguel Indurain in the Alps a few years back now. And Rominger would not give the stage victory to Indurain at all. Indurain was very annoyed about that when he did all of the work and Rominger followed. You can't say that today because in fact it's been completely the reverse. Pantani has done the following and Jan Ullrich has done the pacemaking.
Well, the gap there has come inside 2 minutes now, so that's keeping Bobby Julich second place in the overall standing safe. But Jan Ullrich still pounding out. He's not even thinking about the stage victory at the moment. I think what is more important to him is to get as much time as possible. But shortly, he's going to try and push Marco Pantani to the front because Pantani is looking very fresh, and I wonder if he's going to think about sprinting it out.
Well, I would think he is, you know, because the little pirate there, he's not a renowned sprinter at all, of course, and Ullrich is a fair finisher when it means a stage victory. Don't forget, he's the ex-amateur world champion. Title he won when he was 19 years of age, but Pantani's going to have a go for this one now. Ullrich is coming at him. It's going to be very close, though, because Pantani continues and kicks again. There's no end to this little man's talents. He's lost it on the line, but only just to Jan Ullrich, who gets another stage win in this year's event. It was close, though, as Escartin is bringing home the rest of the main pack of riders here. Renero and Julich are in this group. So, too, is Axel Merckx over to the right in the all-red strip. I think, well, I'm not too sure there's Julich or Escartin there who got it. I think it probably went in the favour of Julich. This is the sprint for first place. And a late run there by Jan Ullrich gets him a second stage win in this year's Tour de France. And it's nice to see him get a road race win to add to his time trial win. But what a race Pantani is having. Another second place for him now to match up with the one he's had previously, plus, of course, his win yesterday, which gave him the lead in the King of the Mountains. This is turning out to be a terrific race, despite all the confusion and scandal surrounding the Tour with drugs. Ullrich then wins ahead of Pantani. Julich, Escartin, Axel Merckx comes into the picture now in 5th place, and Michael Bogert, the ever-present Dutchman, there in 6th, and still looking good for a very high finish in Paris. Overall, not too much change, but Bobby Julich is now only just ahead of Jan Ullrich. Big battle there. Fernando Escartin is hanging on in 4th place, and Christophe Nerero is also riding extremely well in this Tour. The mountains stay with the Tour de France now as we continue through the Alps and we leave Albertville again, and it's going to be a pretty tough ride indeed. Pantani in yellow, Zabel in green, Massey in the polka dot, but there's more scandal on the horizon. The riders of the Tour de France stop in protest for the second time in a week. This time it's over their treatment by the French authorities, who last night raided a team hotel. Police took away members of the TVM team and forced them to have compulsory medical tests. They were finally returned to the hotel at midnight, having eaten nothing. And so the riders today at the 32nd kilometre, at the first sprint of the day at Saint-Jorioz, they protested to Jean-Marie Leblanc, and the main protagonist was Laurent Jalabert, the champion of France, who was joined in the protest by Luc Leblanc, the former world champion. Monsieur Leblanc appealed to the riders and the team directors as friends to continue on the race today. But it wasn't good enough for Laurent Jalabert. He said the riders were again being treated badly, and Jean-Marie Leblanc in fact did promise he would contact the authorities at the highest level and ask them to respect the athletes who have pedalled now 3,000 kilometres and almost 3 weeks of cycling, and to handle the investigations they want in a more dignified manner. Even so, Laurent Jalabert did pull out his ONCE team and has refused to carry on in the Tour de France.
What's also ridiculous is what the police did to TVM last night. That's not right. I mean, if that happened in America, there'd be some lawsuits and there'd be hundreds of $millions at stake, because you just can't barge into people's rooms and demand that they come to the police station and give hair samples, urine samples, blood samples, whatever they had to do in the middle of the night. That's ridiculous.
Among those riders who did restart, although very, very slowly, saying that they will continue on the race route, but it wouldn't be a race, they would do it purely to allow the public to see them, and indeed the public were cheering and clapping as they moved. Marco Pantani, the race leader, helped by a teammate, started to take off his number, and this spread throughout the peloton. The majority of riders did take off their numbers, and it was clear then they would not continue in the Tour de France today. And that was indeed the way it turned out to be. The race stopped at 32 kilometres. It stopped again a little bit further down the road, and the riders continued on. A number of teams pulling out of the race, including the Benesto team and the ONCE team, and the few riders who were actually left in the Risso Scotti team. There were only 3. They also went out of the race. And overnight as well, other riders would retire from the race. So let's hope the Tour de France can get back to normal for the remaining few days to Paris. But for now, let's get back to nicer things. Here's Gary Imlach with a tale of a good mate of ours.
If you've ever bought a cycling magazine, you'll know the work of Graham Watson. He's one of the world's best and most respected cycling photographers. And all the way back at the start of the race in Dublin, he had a retrospective show covering nearly 2 decades of his work on the Tour.
You'd have to try and freeze moments during each day. Action, emotion, drama, tragedy. It's a very unusual sport. It's not like any other sport, as far as I know. You really are almost in the race with them. And there's no question of not being motivated. It's impossible. You know, it's just the drama, his black eyes. He had a crash a few days earlier. He's winning the Tour. He's absolutely riding at his maximum. The crowds are, cheering for him. Fignon, very different. Wasn't uncooperative, but he was very temperamental, equally dramatic in that he wears glasses, which is very unusual for a cyclist. But he was one of the most photogenic guys of his period. Roach, big smiling, happy face. He's won the Tour de France. It's like a nice portrait of him. And that's how he's best photographed in portraits. Delgado, just like a tiger. He won the Tour in '88, and to me it's one of the most exciting Tours de France. He's got this aggression in his face, this emotion, which all I can describe as a tiger on a bicycle. Le Mans, totally different guy, an absolute, outrageous character sometimes. Super strong, super athlete, but equally, unusually, a very, very outgoing, bubbly, lively character. And this picture sums him up on the podium. Indurain was my favourite, simply physically. He was a giant, and he had a dignity about him which no other cyclist I've ever seen has ever had before. He was a prince-like creature. You kind of felt you had to sort of bow to him every morning before you took his picture. There's a killer instinct in the eyes, which is unusual in a guy so quiet and placid. Reece, very different. The guy was 30-odd when he won the Tour. In that picture you see the raw edges on. He's on the very limit, and there's not much more to give. Very intense, but also very frail looking. Ulrich, phenomenal. Staring straight at you, He's almost growling in this picture. It looks as though he's growling at his competitor, but he's actually completely alone, just going 100%. I've got two particular shots which I like very much. It's actually three shots. One is of Hinault and Greg LeMond in the 1986 Tour de France, and that picture kind of sums up the whole tour. It's completely false, because Hinault looks very, very good in it. It looks like he's helping Greg, but in actual fact he raced against him. The other one I like is Fignon pouring water over his feet. It's a rarity. I mean, he sat on the curbstone by the finish line, no crowd barriers anymore. Those days we probably had crowd barriers for 20 yards after the finish. And here's the champion of France, on his way to winning the Tour de France, sat down on the pavement, pouring bottles of Perrier over his feet. That would never happen now. The other one I like is of Wilfried Peters pushing a little kid along in the peloton one day about 8 years ago. This kid just crept into the peloton. He must have been 8 years old, dressed completely as a world champion with all the gear, the hat, the bicycle, everything. And these guys pushed him along. I don't see it as art. Without sounding vain, I feel like I'm performing to a small public who you know are going to buy the magazines that my stuff appears in, who may go and see the exhibition. You feel like you're performing in a very small way, and obviously you're aware that you're working with other performers who are much more important, but everybody's kind of performing, and you're aware you want to give your best.
Graham Watson today getting the kind of pictures he wouldn't really want for his portfolio, but nonetheless it is the story of a controversial Tour de France today, which is surrounded by these allegations of doping. But let's remember that nobody yet has given a positive dope test in this year's Tour de France. We're looking at the riders now as they come down towards the finish in Aix-les-Bains. It should have been the end of a very quick 149 kilometres. In fact, it couldn't be much slower than this, because at local time now it's almost 7:30 in the evening, and the TVM riders are coming through to the front. And it is because of the way the TVM riders were treated yesterday, taken into custody by police for compulsory medical checks, that the riders have performed this go slow. I think over the next 6 months it's going to have quite serious repercussions within the sport of cycling. But there's the TVM riders coming over the line, and Sergei Ivanov is the rider on the right in the Russian National Championships jersey. He must wonder what on earth has happened, because he's just joined the team and he was a very, very promising amateur rider. Eric Zabel there in the green jersey, but no points for him today in that green jersey competition. It's almost his anyway, and we've just got to hope that it gets back to normal tomorrow. The TVM riders, though, are the centre of the controversy, and of course as soon as the race finished, it was the TVM riders the press was seeking out to have words with, to find out just how they felt about all of the proceedings.
I think the whole peloton was won today, and yeah, I hope things are going to change now.
How angry are the riders?
I think they are very angry, yeah? Because we all treated like criminals, and with all the press and everything around us, the police, and yeah, we're not getting a decent. They're not handling decent with us, and so it's not good what is happening now.
But the unhappy events continued, and later that evening, after a Spanish radio phone-in, the two remaining Spanish teams pulled out, Kelme and Vitalico. It meant that fourth place Fernando Escartin was gone as well. It got even worse, as Frenchman Luc Leblanc said he would not continue, while police detained the King of the Mountains leader Rodolfo Massi on suspicion of drug trafficking. He was kept in custody, and next morning was also missing from the field, which was now down to 103. Massi's Casino team were persuaded to continue despite their low morale, and the 218 kilometres from Aix-les-Bains to Neuchâtel in Switzerland was run off at a very quick pace. As they came towards the finish, a group of 45 was battling for the win. Well, this is a perfect launching pad for Zabel. The telecoms are all there now as they all start to go for the line. Surely they will move away. Robin McEwen trying to get through with Leon Van Bon. But watch out for the green jersey of Zabel, because Steels has gone over to our left now as they come up towards the line. Tom Steels and Zabel shoulder to shoulder. Zabel's got the lead now. Up towards the line. Eric Zabel and Tom Steels shoulder to shoulder. It's going to be desperate. Steels gets it, I think. I think it was Tom Steels on the line. 3 for him. I I think, but that's gone to the photo. Let's have a look here now. And in fact, the Mapei rider pulled his foot off the pedal. That unsettled everybody as they launched for the line. Zabel went to the far right. It took Steels a little bit longer to get himself going here, and he dived across to grab the wheel of Erik Zabel. And again, Zabel seems to have led out a little bit too soon and starts to run out of puff. And as he starts to get challenged, Tom Steels now has this amazing acceleration. Look at that, like the best days of Cipollini. And Tom Steels gets it.
It was a very, very hard race, a very fast race. We rode the last 100 kilometers in less than 2 hours. They told me that I did the last 200 meters at 73 kilometers an hour, so everybody is motivated, and it's good for us, it's good for the Tour, it's good for the future, I think.
It's good for Tom Steels as well, but the overall unchanged Pantani, Julich, Ullrich and Aero, it looks rather familiar now, and the gaps are still there. Bobby Julich hanging on. It could be showdown in the time trial between Julich and Ullrich. So the end of the stage at Neuchâtel, a polka dot jersey for Christophe Renero. He refused to wear it the previous day after the arrest of Rodolfo Massi, who was the leader, but he'll certainly wear it from tomorrow onwards. Tomorrow takes us from this lovely town here, La Chaux-de-Fonds in Switzerland. We head over now to Autun, back in France, 242 kilometres, but we'll do it without the TVM team. They decide to fly directly home to Holland from Switzerland, thus bypassing France and all of the problems that they've had there.
But despite the fact that there has been a lot of problems around the Tour de France, Phil, the crowd's still turning out in the millions to watch these riders go by, and many of these riders now just hoping to get up to Paris and get this Tour de France behind them.
Well, this stage is almost behind them now as this little breakaway is trying to sort things out. Derame is the rider in the mauve-coloured hair for US Postal. And this is a breakaway which has been shaping the race virtually all day. At one stage today, it had 17 minutes over the field, and now it's a matter of sorting out the stage win. There are 4 of them left in the action. Dembacke is the rider for Rabobank in second place, and Mazzolini, Eddie Mazzolini, is the Seiko rider. The man at the back is the tall blonde rider. He is almost as tall as Eros Poli. That's Magnus Backstedt here. But Derame is trying to win it for US Postal. They've tried hard for a stage win. They haven't got it yet, but now it looks so Backstedt is going to become the first Swedish rider ever to get a stage. He gets it on the line, so Backstedt is the winner. Tremendous result for the tall Swede from Chris Boardman's GAN team. He came from the back of these 4 riders, and he should be pretty pleased with the way that's gone, Paul.
Certainly did. He waited till the very last moment. He could see this was an uphill drag to the line. He knew anybody who started too soon would crack, and he put his effort in right at the last minute. Very happy with his win.
You did it!
Well, the first win is always the best, and the first win for your country is something really special. But all the favourites now on the eve of the time trial, so Paul Sherwin has taken the opportunity to speak now with Bobby Julich.
Well, Bobby, a fairly standard day the day before a time trial. You happy with the way things went?
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't help for anything more. On a 240K stage, just sitting on the wheels all day, that's always nice. Tomorrow's going to be hard enough, and that's where the race is going to be decided, so no use really getting into any trouble today.
Last year you were 4th on the final time trial, but you didn't have the motivation that you're going to have this time.
That's for sure. I mean, I had motivation, but nothing like that I have now. I mean, I've worked my whole life, my whole career, 13 years of racing my bicycle, waiting for an opportunity like this, and I hope the legs respond.
The top step of the podium seems an awful long way off, but there's a big battle between you and Ullrich. Would you prefer to be second?
Would I prefer to be second? Of course I would prefer to be second. I mean, but just being on the podium, period, is an honor, and to be on the podium with those 2 guys, I don't think you can get much better company, so I'd be quite honored.
Well, good luck to Bobby. Now the time trial is 52 kilometres. Only 96 riders left in the race. It's the final time trial of this year's Tour de France. The moment has come when each rider races alone to stake his claim to a high finish on the Champs-Élysées tomorrow. No hiding now, just flat-out effort and hope it's good enough. Overall, Marco Pantani leads the race and will be last to start the time trial. Bobby Julich and Jan Ullrich will be involved in a personal battle to settle second place, while at the same time see if they can catch the Italian. Ulrich is the best time trialist of the three. He took 4 minutes 21 seconds off Pantani and 78 seconds off Julich in the last time trial in this race 2 weeks ago. Julich has never beaten Ulrich in a Tour trial. The American is under no illusions. So the maillot jaune is for Pantani to lose. In June in the Tour of Italy, he produced a great ride in the final time trial. He'll need to do the same again now. Weather conditions are not good. The roads could be slippery and the risk of punctures high for some of the riders. To take the lead off Pantani, Bobby Julich must gain 6.5 seconds per kilometre, while Jan Ullrich needs 6.8. So the pressure all on Jan Ullrich. It's a tall order to ask him to do that. 6.8 seconds a kilometre, even if it is on Marco Pantani, but he's on his way. So Ullrich is now on course and looking like he's going to have to do something very special. At least he can aim for second place overall.
That's the most important thing for him, to go out and prove himself in a time trial at the end of the Tour de France, which has been a very difficult Tour de France for him this year. An interesting point, the rear wheel there, 28 inches, and Bobby Julich looking very relaxed on the starting gate.
He certainly is. He starts now behind Jan Ullrich and in front of Marco Pantani. He has got to pull out something very special indeed now to hold on to second place in the Tour de France. But even that, you know, even third place, Paul, had to be beyond his wildest dreams 3 weeks ago.
Most certainly must have been, because the only other American to have finished on the podium in Paris is Greg LeMond, and he won 3 Tours. So Bobby Julich certainly going to be the second best performance ever by an American rider at the Tour.
Worth noting too, over this final week, Greg LeMond is around with a cycling group watching the Tour de France from the saddle. I heard he got lost up Alpe d'Huez the other day. I thought he might have known that route better than most. Anyway, let's stay on the time trial now. It's one-on-one here. Ullrich versus Bobby Julich. These two men racing for second place in Paris. I think it's fair to say that, because I don't think anybody's going to reach Marco Pantani. Not after the confidence booster he got in the Giro d'Italia earlier this year when he came into the time trial. They said Tonkov would beat him and take the pink jersey. Well, nothing could have been further from the truth. He actually did beat Tonkov.
Amazing performance by Pantani on that occasion. It just goes to show how much a leader's jersey can change the morale of a man. But it is a difficult time trial course around here this afternoon, Phil, and these weather conditions will make it much more treacherous than it would have been in the dry.
Well, here's to Terryuk. His Czech times have been very, very good out on the course. He's challenging the best time at the finish of Vyacheslav Yekimov, US Postal. Good return to form for Slava there. But now is Terryuk going to make this a new man on the leaderboard. He's from Kazakhstan, by the way. Both are members of former Iron Curtain Soviet Union. And on the line, Terryuk is just fractionally better.
Just 2 seconds ahead, but this is the man out on the course riding the fastest time so far, and you can see the power of Jan Ullrich on that special machine, based on a machine that in fact came from the track, and it was used by the West Germans in the team pursuit and then drafted across to the road, and they used it very successfully in the team time trial.
Well, these are the legs of Bobby Julich riding, remember, 3 minutes behind Jan Ullrich. And so he'll get the benefit of time checks shouted at him out on the course. I'm not sure you want to hear of them. We're waiting to pick up the first time checks. This is the last man on the course, Pantani. We don't expect him to lead at the time checks, but we don't expect him to lose that 6.8 seconds per kilometre either.
Julich in a very good aerodynamic position. You can see the power that he's got, but the top part of his body rocking a little bit, as opposed to that of Jan Ullrich, which is rock steady and very firm on the machine. Ullrich now in a very large gear. These riders all looking at 54 tooth chainring on the front and an 11 tooth sprocket on the back, and Ullrich riding along here at around about 48 kilometers an hour.
So that's 30 miles an hour for Jan Ullrich, and this is really quite an undulating course here. He pushes it up another gear now. Out on the climb just behind Ullrich is Julich. And Julich looks as though he is riding a pretty good time trial out there now. Let's go to the check at 32 kilometres covered, and this is Bjarne Riis, and he's way off the pace here as he goes through. Only 43rd, Paul, so the injury they say he has must be true.
Certainly is. He's got a very bad tendon behind his knee, and that really has affected his performance this afternoon. But the man now looking at the next time check on the road is number 1, last year's winner. Jan Ullrich goes through there, and I'm fairly sure that shortly we will be told that is the fastest time.
And back to Pantani. He's racing some 6 minutes behind Ulrich rather. Julich is 3 minutes and Samet in between them both. And in fact, Ulrich has gone through with the best time. There's the confirmation, 19:28. Julich 27 seconds slower, and Pantani only 49 seconds lost in the first 16 kilometres.
He's doing a stormer. He really is riding a magnificent time trial. Now the next time check, the time of Jan Ullrich, 31 minutes 49 seconds. Bobby Julich's going to go outside of that, 26 seconds, so he will be losing his second place in the overall standings.
And ironically hanging on to second place in the time trial right now. But look at this, Raniero has been caught now by Jan Ullrich, so he's bridged a 3-minute gap there now. Raniero a little bit inspired by the bypassing there of Jan Ullrich. Pantani also still riding the time trial yet again of his life here in the Tour de France. He's riding third place. The top 3 riders in the Tour de France are setting the best 3 times on the course.
Incredible ride by Pantani, but now we're coming to the part of the course that will suit Bobby Julich, as in fact Marco Pantani taking a few risks there going around 1 or 2 of these corners, but Ullrich using his power. Look at the way he's pedaling now, up around about 100 revolutions per minute, keeping the speed high, while Pantani always accelerating.
Well, at 45 kilometres from a covered, 54 seconds was the gap to Bobby Julich, and it's going to be even a little bit more than that now. Baranowski's still the leader on the board. That will all change with the arrival of Jan Ullrich, his 3rd stage win of the Tour for sure now. His time's better than the 2 that remain. Jan Ullrich, though, I don't think is going to claim the leader's yellow jersey, but he should have done enough to claim second place in Paris tomorrow.
You can see how hard he's tried, Phil. He wanted to go out and prove a point today. He wanted to try and ride himself as close as possible to Marco Pantani. He's done enough to get second place in the overall standings, but you know, Bobby Julich has ridden a good time too.
Well, Bobby has given us some great time trials this past 2 years of the Tour de France. This is his 2nd tour, and Julich now is riding to probably the 2nd best time of the day, so if he's going to lose second place overall, he's going to lose it in style. He comes up towards the finish now, 1:4:53 for Bobby Julich, so he has lost second overall. And Marco Pantani, Paul, I think has done enough to win the Tour de France.
He certainly has. Look at this. He's taken the bike that he used in the final time trial of the Tour of Italy this afternoon. And what a magnificent performance. We were calculating how much he had to lose. Well, he hasn't lost very much at all, and he's going to take 3rd place in this time trial.
So Marco Pantani comes to the line, and he comes through in style as well. He'll get the 3rd best time of the day. He will keep his lead in the Tour de France. Yes, it will be reduced, but it won't matter now. I would say the margin he's got now will be the one he will take to Paris. 1:6:27 on the line for Marco Pantani. So he stays in yellow. Jan Ullrich will come up into 2nd place. So there's the face of Marco Pantani, the spray coming off his back wheel. But one of the riders, of course, who did the ride was Bobby Julich. That's the situation in the time trial. Now let's go to Paul Sherwin, who can speak again with Bobby Julich.
Bobby, over the first part of the time trial course, you managed to rival Jan Ullrich, but over the latter parts, you couldn't keep up with him.
I had no idea what the splits were. I told my team car to not tell me anything. So, I don't know, I felt good, but, you know, I knew that you'd have to have a terrific day to beat Jan Ullrich. And I don't know even what place I am in on the stage, but 2nd, so hey. You know, Jan is a terrific athlete and now a good friend. I mean, we had a great time here together. We both suffered bad, but we both supported each other. And, you know, Pantani came out of nowhere and twapped all of us. But I think Jan and I have a long career here in the Tour de France, and it's going to be an honor to be with those 2 guys on the podium.
So there's the situation overall. Pantani, Ullrich, Julich. Paris awaits the arrival of the 85th Tour de France. The 96 survivors, barely 50% of the field, arrive in the romantic capital today. The sun is shining, and the strife-torn field should have an Italian winner for the first time in 30 years. It will be an emotional moment. Yes, this is the Champs-Élysées in Paris, and you know, over this past week we often wondered if indeed we would be standing here for the finish of the Tour de France. Ever since the race had left Ireland, it has been troubled by doping scandal. Well, the International Cycling Union know now there are cheats in this sport. They must show they are strong, they must increase the penalties for the offenders, and they also must make stronger doping controls. The riders who are coming into Paris today, I think, are relieved the secret is out. I hope they are all clean, as everybody does. And in fact, two of the big teams in the Tour de France, the Telecom team and the Cofidis team, have said they want to put big money now into making better tests for dope checks in cycling. I think to balance the argument, we should point out the Tour de France makes dope checks every day, and so far, everyone has proved negative. Now to the nicer side of the sport, the arrival today in Paris of the first Italian winner of the race since 1965. He's the most popular rider in the world right now, Marco Pantani, so let's enjoy the day with him. And here he is this morning, and if he looks a bit different, well, Marco Pantani's been busy overnight, pulling his beard into line with his yellow jersey. In fact, the other 6 survivors of his Mercatoni Uno team have also dyed their hair yellow, well, yellowish anyway, for today's ride into Paris. And it also matches the colour of the champagne here as they head now towards the Champs-Élysées. Andrea Taffi's had a great Tour de France as the new champion of Italy too, hasn't he?
He certainly has, but when it comes down to the final lap on the Champs-Élysées, Nicolas Jalabert, the only Jalabert left in the race, is trying to go clear, but all of the sprinters' teams are keeping it very compact at the front.
Well, it's always hard to keep the sprinters at bay when you come to the last stage of the Tour de France. Remember that Eric Zabel has tried and tried again to equal Rudi Altig's record, which is the German record of 8 stage wins. He's had 7, but this year he's had absolutely none. And now as he heads up towards the finishing line, he's not very well placed either. Little bit of wheel slip there as the Gant team tried to stir it up, but now it's coming up towards the line here now, and it's still Fanini stuck in on the inside, and Zabel is on the wheel of George Hincapie. McEwen is on the wheel of Eric Zabel, but Tom Steels is coming away, and it looks like a 4th stage win for Steels. Well, it's been a perfect tour for Tom Steels after the disqualification a year ago. 4 stage wins for him, and he's finished with the Sprint Royale on the Champs-Élysées. So the champion of Belgium wins the stage, and this is how he does it. He makes it look pretty easy in the end. He certainly was the best sprint finisher of the race. He made sure of that, but he wasn't consistent enough to win the green jersey. That's certainly going to Eric Zabel, while the maillot jaune of the Tour de France has gone to the pirate himself, probably the most popular winner of the Tour for many, many years, Marco Pantani. And all of Paris will toast that today. There's the final result after over 92 hours of racing. Jan Ullrich finishing 3 minutes 21 seconds back of Pantani. Bobby Julich of the United States taking 3rd at 4:08, and the big surprise, Christophe Raniero coming 4th. Michael Bogart was 5th. The King of the Mountains being taken out by Christophe Raniero in the end, 200 points for him. Pantani getting 2nd there. Alberto Elli finishing 3rd. Eric Zabel, a clear winner of the Green Points jersey for a 3rd year. Once he gets 4, he'll equal the record held by Sean Kelly, and his son watches on. There was no doubt about Marco Pantani being a great winner despite all the controversy. He was simply the best, winning the Tour of Italy and the Tour de France in the same year. Only 6 other riders have ever done that, and the top 3, well, they all deserve the accolades. Well, as I said at the beginning, this is the 10th year we brought you the video on the Tour de France, and my goodness me, we couldn't have brought you a more controversial race, the 85th edition of the event. But in the end, it found a true winner, the most popular man in the world of cycling, Marco Pantani.
And despite all the scandals that rocked the Tour de France this year, Phil, Marco Pantani provided some fantastic racing. The way he went through the Pyrenees and then onto the Alps, and finally with a great time trial at the end, became the first climber since Lucien Van Impe in 1976 to win the Tour de France.
That's a good point, because they said a pure climber could never win the Tour de France again. Well, he has done this time. They also said you could never do the double anymore, win the Giro d'Italia and the Tour de France in the same year. Marco Pantani has proved them wrong in that as well. So until the next time, for Paul Sherwin, I'm Phil Liggett saying goodbye.